Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you happen to be watching this. I hope you are ready to come back to class, and I hope that this is useful as we look at ways to structure the response. I have two, and I have newish question mark points to consider. Up until now, I think I spent a lot of time. Did he do something well? Did he do something you liked? Did he do something that you hated? Was it good? Was it bad? Was it worth reading? What I think you need to do is that's fine. But one of the other things I think you can consider, or let's go back and say two of the other things you can consider, is Green sets up some expectations. Does he fulfill them? Or does he do something better than your expectations? Or does he fail to fulfill them and leave you feeling flat? The other thing, I think it's fair to respond to Green by comparing and contrasting what Green does with other things. All right. I think that's absolutely fair game. Comparing and contrasting Green with other writers, or comparing and contrasting something Green chooses to talk about, some example Green picks with other examples that may be just as good or better. Let's start. Green uses Fitzgerald to set up wonder. For a transitory enchanted moment, man must have held his breath in the presence of this continent, compelled into aesthetic contemplation he neither understood nor desired, face to face with the last time in history feeling something commensurate to his capacity for wonder. When one thinks about the term wonder, the idea of a transitory enchanted moment, something that is magical but is going to be gone in an instant. Something that takes one's breath away. Something that is totally and completely beyond the normal. Something that is huge. An entire continent. Something that is forceful, that compels you. Something that is beyond your reason, or at least the reason you had developed before this experience. Historic, the last time in history, and something that I think goes to beauty. If you think about the aesthetic contemplation, I'm going to pick about 5 or 6 other quotations that I think do some of the same things. So, for example, The Hunger Games. It talks about a lovely, unearthly melody. Is that as good as what Fitzgerald said? I don't know. Does it tell more than what Fitzgerald does instead of show like Fitzgerald tries to do? But it does give us the sense of grandeur. It is unearthly. It is beautiful. It is something that appeals to the senses. From the Knife of Never Letting Go takes up everything. It's an entire continent. It's an entire universe. It takes up everything. It is taking over the running of your body. It is compelling you. Perhaps this phrasing in a young adult book is better than the word compel because it's showing. Compel, that Fitzgerald uses, is merely telling. The mystery sound, the spirit sound, the bad sound. Perhaps the parallelism, perhaps the short, punchy phrases might be enough here to be something you could compare with Fitzgerald and wonder if perhaps Green should have returned to his roots of young adult literature. He couldn't think. He knew he was praying, but he didn't know what the prayer was. That, once again, seems to be something that is awe inspiring. And certainly, something that is beautiful and terrible at the same time, certainly, at a simple level, might be better than what Fitzgerald said, maybe not. That's for you to determine. I'm saying that you get to make comparisons. You get to compare what Green uses as an example or what Green writes with things that other people have written, with examples that you have encountered in your life that may or may not be better. All of these do a pretty good job of showing what happens when one encounters something that creates that sense of wonder, that sense of awe. Expectation and fulfillment. If you look at all of the examples we've had before, they were like the Big Bang. They were huge. They were beyond anything we've ever experienced before. They were tornadoes. They were having your body compelled to listen to something. Green doesn't really talk about the Big Bang in the sense of where he saw the wonder. He talks about the leaf and how he found wonder in the leaf. That fulfillment may seem a little light next to the Big Bang, but that fulfillment may have developed a theme that we want to explore deeper, that resonates in a way that the Big Bang can't. We've all seen leaves. Several people in my classes have seen tornadoes, but not all of us. Several people may have heard, melodies from musicians or from birds that transform their lives. A lot of us haven't. But all of us have seen a leaf. And maybe all of us need to be reminded that there's wonder in the ordinary, not just the big things, the ordinary. So by not meeting our expectation, by giving us a fulfillment that was a leaf, does that make this a really great essay? That's up to you to decide with one of yours. My point here, and I'm going to repeat it again, compare and contrast what Green does. His party trick has been pull a bunch of literary quotations. Are there other literary quotations that might be better? I chose the ones I did because Green is famous for young adult fiction, so I picked them from young adult fiction. Think about other ways you can respond to the essay rather than it was good or bad, rather than I liked it, I didn't like it. And does he stick the landing with his leaf? Were we pulled into aesthetic contemplation that we neither understood nor desired by Green's essay? Do we resonate? Does something about his description of the leaf resonate with us so that we might think more about having this sense of aesthetic contemplation in the ordinary and looking for it in places that we haven't desired to look at it before? That phrasing was kind of bad, I apologize. But I think the point stands. Did he stick the landing in a way that makes us want to contemplate things more deeply than we've ever wanted to contemplate them before? I've spent a lot of time in class urging you to talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of this essay with what I think is good, great, bad, and ugly, and how you can think about this essay or how I'd respond to this essay. And hopefully, there's a couple ideas in here that'll help you respond to the essay. Humor. I like the idea of humor. There's certainly a bit of realism here. Who hasn't misspelled aesthetic? That's pretty good. Making fun of spelling when you're a writer and have an editor. Well, we all kind of do now with spell checks and autocorrects. But I don't know if it's enough, but at least it's a start. Then he goes on with, you know, using it to connect the elements of the essay. He talks about horrifying excesses several times, and he has his own story of horrifying excess. Gatsby is all about horrifying excess. Green says he lived some. He's got some hyperbole in there. That humor connecting the elements of the essay, it's pretty good. I think he was smart. I talked about maybe he should have stuck to his genre to describe wonder, but let's face it, almost everybody in the United States at one time or another has been forced to encounter the Great Gatsby. As he says, it's difficult to escape high school English in the US without being assigned the book. So it's an easy connection. Most people at some point have encountered it. It's kind of one of those touchstone books, The Catcher in the Rye, Great Gatsby. There's a few others that seem to pop up in the English classes all the time. I could add To Kill a Mockingbird. So that, again, is a good idea. People have read the thing. I do want to give him credit for what I think is a great reading of Gatsby. I'm a bit of a cynic. I'm not sure Gatsby holds up anymore. But Green's reading here, I think, is pretty good and allows anybody who's read Green and becomes an English teacher, allows that English teacher to talk about Gatsby no matter what the times are. It's the condemnation of the American idea. Perhaps it's a celebration of the same idea. It can be recited happily or mournfully as the occasion requires. In other words, you can bring your own leanings to the book and get out of it what you kind of want. And I think that that's why Gatsby is hung around. It also might be why I think that Gatsby has outlived its usefulness, because everybody can bring whatever they want to it. And if it's something that can be used happily or mournfully as the occasion requires, it's probably become something we should put on the shelf and pick up again in 30 years and see if it holds up. I do think the important thing, the really important thing, is his reminder of the obvious. We are never far from wonders. Being in a family is a wonder. Playing a game of magic is a wonder. Doing things together is a wonder. We're never far from that. But we don't remember it very often. And I think that that's a huge reminder. If I'm writing an essay about our capacity for wonder, this is one of the places I want to get to. This is one of the things I think Green does exceptionally well. On the bad or ugly side, goodness, do we need this whole thing? During your narrative essays, I told you keep the point in the narrative and the point you want the narrative to achieve. Green had a narrative here. I went out with my son and saw this leaf. Make sure you're doing, enough to keep the focus. Select your details to keep the reader focused on your goal of this is what Green did well, this is what Green did poorly. The final rating, I think, look, we're surrounded by wonders. Observing them keeps us human. Observing them is a bit of heaven on earth. And the essay itself, uh, or he says it gives him 5 stars. I agree with that. I think that that's really solid. But I do think, you know, maybe he simplified things just a little bit too much there. But there really wasn't much ugly. So I hope this wraps it up. These are things to think about. They're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I think they're things to think about, and I hope they help you a little bit look at different ways you can respond to Green's to one of the essays that we've talked about. Hope to see everybody in the next class period. Hope you all have a good day.